Now we are celebrating the 4th of July. I did a video back talk about the American Revolution, and it almost became an anarchist revolution, especially when Pennsylvania and Massachusetts, where they one of them adapted a more anarchist style society with a direct democracy, and another from proto-socialism of Thomas Paine, both being oppressed by the U.S. government of the founding fathers, and also the Shoatz Rebellion, which is the closest we ever get to a third revolution. Now, let's look back at the first country that achieved their independence. People look at the United States as the first, which is technically true in chronological order. Well, technically not true, but you will get my point. But people forget the other early example of independent movement, one before the United States or shortly after the United States, was Haiti. And people forget that Haiti, the Jamaican Maroons, and the Republic of Pirates in the Bahamas were anarchist revolutionaries. It was heavily decentralized, non-horizontal. The Republic of Pirates was an anarchist society. The Jamaican Maroons was also an anarchist society. While the Haitian Revolution was inspired by anarchist principles before being betrayed by the founding of the Haitian Empire. And today we're going to focus about these things. Let's start with the Jamaican Maroons because it is technically the first of the three that started. In Jamaica, across the Caribbean from Suriname in Jamaica from as early as the 60s, there developed a similar decentralized Maroon communities. Only they that were fighting against the local enslavers of the British Empire. After generations of unsuccessful campaigns by the British against the Maroon guerrillas, they too hit upon the necessity of trying to divide the fighting Maroons from their main source of new recruits, the enslaved African workers. So the British offered the Maroons treaties similar to those in Suriname. To force the British to adopt such methods, the Maroons fought tenuously, skillfully, and bravely for over 100 years. Even though there are also we witness a number of decentralized groups, they roughly became to be recognized as the Windward and Leeward Maroons. The former located in eastern Windward end of Jamaica, and the latter westward Leeward side. And history records the most northern Maroons of the Windwards as an African woman named Granny Nanny, who even had a town named after her in the Maroons' liberated territory. Indeed, Nanny Town became the center of the resistance to British plantation imperialism in Jamaica. The headquarters for the Maroons bands almost succeeded in driving all the imperialists from the island altogether, even though British soldiers captured and burned Nanny Town on a number of occasions. The dominant personality amongst the Leeward was an African man named Cudjoe. History records that Cudjoe as leading a tightly controlled and centralized operation, when the Windward had to make a attack across the island during one fierce suppression effort, seeking Leeward's help. Even Cudjoe could not force them to abandon their autonomy. Tallying, it was Granny Nanny who led a segment of decentralized Windwards to resist signing the treaty the longest. She went as far as to have British envoys killed on more than one occasion, and only submitted after Cudjoe and all of the male Maroons had capitulated. After these, Maroons were used to help the British hunt and capture new runaways, as well as suppress revolts amongst the still enslaved African workers, although they fiercely clung to the freedom and autonomy they and their ancestors had fought for. In fact, over a generation later, the descendants were again engaged in the British in the Treleaway War in the middle of the 1790s, during which a mere 267 Maroon guerrillas fought thousands of British soldiers, local militia, and enslaved Africa to complete standstill. They, however, were also tricked and placed on boats to be deported to Canada, and later to Africa after accepting a truce. Even so, from then until our time, the descendants of those remaining Maroon communities in Jamaica still to continue to occupy the lands they fought on, and they never recognized any owner, neither the British or the black governments. And even to this day, this is the oldest independent country in the Americas, second only to the United States. Then we look at the Pirate Republic in the Bahamas. Escaping from a life in tyrannical monarchies and market economies, the 17th and 18th century pirates took up plundering merchant ships in the Atlantic and Indian Oceans, Caribbean Sea, and the Gulf of Mexico. Between and within crews, pirates organized themselves in an egalitarian manner, completely with highly democratic constitutions, checks and balances and a loose confederation of crews. At any given time, there were estimated 1,000 to 2,000 pirates and even larger number of buccaneers, who were essentially part-time pirates that spent a portion of their time engaging in state-sanctioned plundering. A study of a pirate cruise between 1760 and 1726 found that the average crew had 80 members, although a cruise of 150 to 200 members were not uncommon. An analysis of 23 pirate crews between 1682 and 1726 found that over a quarter of the average crew was of African descent. Aside from a democratically elected captain and quartermaster, all pirates on the ship received equal share of the loot. The captain and the quartermaster received up to twice the normal share, but they were expected to store their wealth and make it available to the crew if times of need. Pirates could record and replace captains for a number of reasons, including corruption, cowardice, and poor judgment. Although the captain assumed full authority in times of chase and battle, when snap decisions needed to be made, and had very little to no coercion power during all of their time. Crews sometimes execute captains who exceed their limited authority. The quartermaster who distributed food and loot adjusted crew conflicts and administrated punishment, but separate the power into two offices. Pirate crews created a system of checks and balances to prevent the captain from assuming the kind of autocratic power seen on the merchant ships. A written constitution called the Articles of Agreement set rules for the ship and specific limits of the authority of the captain, of the quartermaster, and of the other officers. The crew had to reach full consensus to approve the articles. Articles from Captain's rubber ship laid out guidelines for how to make decisions by majority vote, how to settle dispute by duel, and how to distribute loot. Officers get 1/4 to choose shares, everyone else gets 1 share. The article also stipulated the rules against stealing from other members, striking one another at sea, bringing women onto the ship. Punishment include banishing, slitting of the ears and nose, and death. Although a substantial minority of pirates traded slaves, free Africans and African Americans, including ex-slaves, were common on pirate ships. And many of them were recorded on almost every pirate ship, and only rarely as slaves, according to Peter Lemport and Marcus Radkiger. The egalitarian structure proved to be pretty effective at keeping peace internally. David Gabriel observed that pirates, despite being constantly armed and frequently drunk, virtually never came to blows with one another. There were some women pirates, including Anne Bonny and Mary Read, who cursed and swore like sailors, carried their weapons like those well trained in the ways of war, and boarded prize vessels as the only most daring and respected members of pirate crews were permitted to do. And they created a stateless ingathering-based communities on land. This is called a pirate land basis. In the Bahamas, this is where we had the Republic of Pirates. One prominent base is the new province in Nassau, Bahamas from 1716 to 1718. Gabriel Kuhn cited an estimate that the settlement had about 2,000 people, including pirates and other residents. There were no laws or governments. Pirates were said to have spent their days drinking, gambling, sleeping with sex workers, and laying on hammock. Frank Sherry described the temporary pirate utopia, and I quote, "A shanty town, a steady collection of stores, shacks, whorehouses, and saloons, cobbled together with driftwood and canvas, with palm thatch for roofs, straight into half circle along the sandy shores of the harbor. The wreckage of captured supplies lay rotting on the beach, their roofs exposed like long dead carcasses. Thousands of vessels, pirates, sloop, and captured merchants crowd the harbor. Their masts look like a leafless forest from the shore. In this place, their own crazy metropolis. The pirates of the Western world drank, argued amongst themselves, gambled away fortune, paid in stolen coin for the bodies of the prostitutes who flocked to the town, and lived in a voracious present until their coins was gone and they had to go to sea once more. It was said that the strength of Nassau, a combination of roasting meat, smoked human offal, rum, unwashed bodies, and rotting garbage, all stewed together under a tropical sun, would be detected far out to the sea, long before the island itself was visible. New Providence and its wild harbor town were in many ways a pirate haven as well as a pirate heaven. Free from all laws other than the laws of piracy, it made available all the rough joys that the outlaw brotherhood held dear." End quote. There's also one in Madagascar. In 1697, a pirate crew and their Malagasy wives, a neighbor, jointly established a community of Abnornova, which, according to David Gray, represented an attempt to amplify a democratic principle of organization, typically a pirate ship, to set a community on land. When a dispute arose, pirates poured liquor onto the ground, sacrificing it to the devil. Then both pirates in dispute were summoned to meet Captain North's house for the conflict by the judge of the captain, 12 assistant judge chosen by lot. The punishment was usually a line. According to Joaquin Payne, described Renter's Bay, another pirate enclave in Madagascar, and I quote, one such utopia was found in Renter's Bay, a place named which, as C. Hill points out, lends some credit to the assumption that radical antinomian sect may have found adherents among the pirates. According to Daniel Defoe, the king of the pirates, Captain Avery, himself settled for a while in Madagascar. As a mock king, Hill pointed that Defoe stressed the libertarian aspects of every settlement. In a free state as we were, everybody was free to go wherever they would. End quote. In Bain's account, quote, below, Libertalia featured prominently, even though most historians agree Libertalia was fictional due to the lack of historical and archaeological evidence aside from a single 1724 book. And I quote, after the fall of Tortuga, the Buccaneer idea remained alive all through the golden age of piracy. In 1660 to 1720, it resulted in a last settlement in Belize, for example, which was founded by buccaneers, then at the scene of shift to Madagascar, an island still unclaimed by imperial power and ruled only by patchwork of native kings, eager for pirate allies. The pirate utopia reached its highest form. The false account of Captain Mission and the founding of Libertalia may be, as some historians claim, a literary hoax meant to propagandize for radical Whig history, but it was embedded in the general history of pirates in 1724 to 28, most of which is still accepted as true and accurate. Moreover, the story of Captain Mission was not criticized when the book appeared. Many old Madagascar hands still survive. They seem to have believed it, no doubt, because they have experienced pirate enclaves very much like Libertalia. Once again, rescued slaves, natives, and even traditional enemies such as Portuguese were all invited to join as equals. Libertarian slave ship was a major preoccupation. Liberating slave ships. Land was held in common, represented elected for short terms, booty share, doctrines of liberty were preached far more radical than even to those of common sense. Libertalia hoped to endure the mission die in this defense. Most of the pirate utopias were meant to be temporary. In fact, the Corsair true republics where their ships would sail under articles. Shore enclaves usually had no law at all. The last classic example, Nassau in the Bahamas, a beach fort resort for sex and ted devoted to wine, women, appropriate boys chew to judge by birth, sodomy, and piracy. Son, the pirate were indulgently fond of music and used to hire on bands for entire cruises, and wretched excess, vanished overnight when the British fleet appeared in the bay. Blackbeard and Calico Jack Rachma and his crew of pirate women moved on to the wilder shores and nastier fates, while others meekly accepted the pardon and reform. But the buccaneer tradition lasted both in Madagascar, where the mixed-blood children of the pirates began to carve out kingdoms of their own, and in the Caribbean, where escaped slaves as well as mixed black, white, and indigenous groups were able to thrive in the mountains and black lands as Maroons. The Maroon community in Jamaica still retained a degree of autonomy in many of the old folk ways when Sora Niho Hudson visited there in the 1920s, and head into the book Tell My Horse. The Maroons of Suriname still practice African paganism. And last but not least, we have to look at Haiti. They often been overlooked in the history, not because Haiti revolution itself, but the revolution's anarchist tendencies within it. Following many years of hidden small-scale resistance, African slaves in the French colony of Saint Domingo rose up in 1791 against their colonizer slave master. By 1804, they abolished slavery, expelled the French colonizer, and established an independent republic of Haiti. Haiti was given the name of the Caribbean island by the Taínos before colonizers arrived, slaughtered the entire indigenous population, and imported African slaves. While 1776 and 1789 revolutions in the U.S. and France were grounded in exclusionary citizen rights, the Haitian Revolution stood out for committed to universal human rights. Thanks to the revolution, Haitians enjoyed freedom from enslavement from 46 years to 1802 to 1848. According to Nesbitt, the Haitian Revolution was a combination of radical strengths and Enlightenment political philosophy that acted upon Spinoza's revolutionary proposition to avoid, insofar as possible, the alienation of customary power to representative bodies and to always preserve the natural rights in its entirety. As the revolutionary, a former Black Panther, Russell Maroon Shoatz, the Haitian Revolution saw two competing tendencies: the centralized dragon and the decentralized Hydra, which are the anarchists in this video. They were between 1791 to 1804. We witnessed one of the most titanic struggles ever engaged in between enslaved workers and their overlords. It's for examination of the events surrounding the struggle that we can clearly measure the strengths and weaknesses of the Dragon and Hydra, the centralized decentralized forces. In the Maroon Age and Haitian resistance, in the years preceding the revolution, slaves resisted their conditions through subservient ritual strikes, running away, and occasional violent revolts. Gathering in private, slaves would practice voodoo rituals aimed to control their masters' souls. As many as two-thirds of the slaves had been born in Africa on the revolutionary's eve, and thus the ritual borrowed elements from a variety of African traditions. A slave saying, "We swear to destroy the whites and all they possess. Let us die rather than fail to keep this vow." In public, they found way to do more subtly maintain a cultural opposition. When they hear the church funeral bells, blacks sing along with their own lyrics. "One good white is dead, the bad ones are still here." The historian Lombard Dubois speculated that the hidden meaning may have been the only good white was a dead one. The slavery commonly walked off the job and ran away for short and long periods of time. In 1744, 66 slaves walked off the plantation in protest of a cruel overseer. The overseer retaliated by killing one of the strikers, a pregnant woman. Slavers then killed the overseer and were condemned to death, but the governor intervened to save them. According to Boyce, such strikes occurred with some regularity, often led to negotiated return of the slaves. Probably as a result of such actions, slaves secure a number of rights, including the right to have their own garden plots and spend most of the weekend tending to their plots and selling the products in town for personal profit. At times, the runaways or Maroons left permanently. By 1751, there were about 3,000 Maroons. Many lived under the leadership of the chief Macandra, occasionally invoking Allah, asserting ability to return to a fly. Macanda organized a large army of Maroons to try to poison the white master's water. He was betrayed, captured, and burned alive. Some followers believe the changed shape and escaped just before his execution in 1758. On August 21st, 1791, however, the slaves began a series of arsons and massacres around the region in La Cap, and inspired by two enslaved voodoo practitioners, a man named Bookman and a woman who might be named Cecil Fatiman, destroyed a number of plantations. The revolt was led by a scourge of decentralized band of African workers. Committing a small fraction of violence inflicted on them by masters, some slaves report violate women and allegedly carry a white child on a pike as a standard. Given the legacy of proto-enslavement, however, the rebels were surprisingly moderate in James' judgment. They spared many of them, and women and children. Among the many decentralized groups were Maroon rebels such as Jean Francois, Ebisa, and Lamour de Rance, and slave rebels including Romani, the Romain, the prophetess, and Haitian mulattoes, and a small segment of whites who were in league with the anti-slavery wing of the French Jacobins, who were loosely associated themselves with one rebel group or another. Long after the start of the revolution, the ex-slave Toussaint Petrel, or later Toussaint Louverture, decided to join in. At the age of 45, he was already known as Lord Toussaint. Toussaint would become a major figure of the revolution due to his technical brilliance, and he came from the relatively privileged domestic sector of slaves. As the French Revolution went on, the Haitian Revolution energized masses in Paris. The slaves have showed revolutionary friends that they could fight and die for freedom. By August 1792, Parisian masses opposed slavery. On 11th of August, a colonial agent in France lamented one spirit alone reigned here, is the horror of slavery and enthusiasm for liberty. In January 1793, French rebels executed the king, and Spain and England declared war on France. Spanish invaders of Saint Domingo received a mass support for blacks who wanted to expel France's slave master, and Toussaint became a Spanish military official. As they replaced his given slave name with Toussaint Louverture, he remained loyal to the Spanish even after the French Commission. Sontonax declared his support for the abolition of slavery and promised freedom to those who joined the French side. Ashley Smith explained Louverture's motivation for hesitating to join the French side, and I quote, "He was not fooled by the Spanish, and his decision was certainly not the result of some African allegiance to kingship. It was a rational calculation. He knew that Santana had no power to abolish slavery. They lay in the hands of the Assembly, which had yet to prove itself an ally to the slaves." In 1794, French National Convention officially abolished slavery in the French colonies. When he heard this news, he declared his allegiance with France. As Louverture accumulated the statutory authority over the country of the colony's inhabited crew, impatient of his judgment. He appointed prominent whites to the top government posts and enacted harsh regulations of forced labor. Even after Britain withdrew in 1798, after the French dictator Napoleon seized power, Louverture remained loyal to France. Shaw argued those Thus, at one swell swoop, these leaders have been forced to play the role of neo-colonial cooperators. As many blacks worry about the possible reinstitution of chattel slavery, Louverture himself acquired multiple plantations. Former white masters now become employees, and the black workers were legally forbidden from changing plantation or occupation. By 1795, plantation workers rose up against Louverture, setting harvests on fire and killing several managers. They even shot Louverture in the leg before being suppressed. In 1796, more plantation workers revolt. A skilled fighter appointed by Louverture to command the North Province, General Moisey became the adopted nephew of Louverture. Still, Moisey has strong misgivings about the ongoing exploitation of blacks. He remarked, "Whatever my own uncle may do, I cannot bring myself to the execution of my color." On September 22nd, 23rd, 1801, blacks in many areas rose up with a cry, "Long live Moisey," and killed several hundred whites. Toussaint responded by executing Moisey on November 21st. Toussaint Chief Lieutenant Jean-Jacques Dessalines approached French General Charles Leclerc and suggested he put in charge. Sure enough, Leclerc arrested Toussaint, who was taken to France where he died in prison. Dessalines took leadership of the Haitian army. As Haitians fought to expel the French, military strength came from below, from local districts. James Wright, Derange, Samuel Smith, Jenny Perrier, and other nameless petty chieftains, north, south, and west, each of his own districts summoned the blacks to revolt. The masses were fighting and dying as only revolutionary masses can. The women were now fighting side by side with the Fan. Staying loyal to the French, Dessalines and other generals hunted down and arrested many of these rebels. Dessalines even invited the rebels Charles and Saint Pelaire for a meeting, ostensibly about the possibility of joining forces against the French, and meeting Dessalines had them arrested and delivered to Leclerc. In October 1802, Dessalines finally defected from the French. Haitians expelled France in 1804, and Dessalines declared himself emperor for life. In 1805, Dessalines ordered a massacre of remaining whites in Haitian. As an emperor, Dessalines proved to be a cruel tyrant over the Haitian people. He was assassinated within a few years. Reflecting on the revolution, Maroon Shoatz contrasted the abbreviated role of the decentralized dragon forces with the consistently revolutionary role of the decentralized Hydra forces, and I quote, "Thus, we can see how Haitia's dragon forces play a very ambivalent role of the rebel fight for independence. They started out as tenacious and brilliant fighters. During the course of the revolutionary struggle, they all opportunistically switched to the French imperialist side, went on to attempt to drown the still revolutionary masses and their decentralized group in blood, hoping that way the French would allow them to serve as a new elite class of African policemen against a re-enslaved African workers' class. Fairly to suppress the rebels, the Dragon Force re-enjoined the Hydra elements and lent their weight to totally defeating the French, only to once again turn against the revolutionary masses by establishing themselves a dictatorial and exploitative African elite. For this part, the decentralized Hydra forces never veered from their objective of winning as much freedom from servitude and oppression as possible. From the pre-revolutionary times of Macanta up to from the 1791 to 1804 Haitian Revolutionary War, and even down to our time, they know that in addition to fighting the French during their revolution, they were also under attack by Toussaint's dragon forces, who display hatred and fear of everything from their refusal to religion to Maroon, decentralized organizational formation, to their practice of their traditional voodoo spiritual system, the latter which did a great deal to inspire their soldiers to martyr themselves to the cause of freedom. Then, after being pushed to the side after the French were driven out, the decentralized Hydra elements were forced to again go underground and eventually morph into semi-secret voodoo societies that until today remain a little recognized or understood autonomous elements among the oppressed Haitians. Long live the Haitian people and what is going on today in Haiti. Long live anarchy.